What's up, everyone?
Black joy feeling.
Excited about this next conscious conversation
Black joy
with my sister Kim Moore. We'll play a little bit of this song, Black Joy, by the homies Leroy Anderson and Jonathan Likes, from the Black Joy Experience playlist.
My black joy magic with the family. My black joy rising right in front of me. Cause it's black feelings till eternity. My black joy dancing, celebrating life with me. It's black joy magic with the family. My black joy rising right in front of me. Cause it's black feelings till eternity. My black joy dancing, celebrating life with me. It's black joy magic.
All right, y'all. I see Kim coming in now.
Hey, Greg.
What's up, Kim?
How are you?
Hanging in there, hanging in there.
Same. I understand. Can you hear me well?
Yes. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Awesome. As we were waiting for you to join, we were listening to the Black Joy Experience playlist. So thank you for lifting that up. We were listening to the particular track I'll just name is Black Joy by the homies Lee Anderson and Jonathan Likes. So check it out on Spotify. We'll make sure to also include it in the link to share with folks.
You know, they really did their thing on that album. I love it.
Yes. And that song was Black Joy, but I think it just brings a lot of joy to everyone who listens to it. So
yeah, absolutely.
Awesome. Well, I'm particularly excited, everyone who's going to be tuning in for this conscious conversation. Kim is a comrade, a friend, I like to call movement mate in this fight for justice, and looking forward to kind of digging in. There's a lot of things that we want to talk about, but I'm sure we can be able to get through as much as we can today in the time that we have.
Yeah, definitely.
Awesome. So just really quickly, for those of you who are meeting or learning about Kim, for the newer to Kim, Kim is an organizer based in San Diego, who is working to create alternatives to police and to really keep people safe. And Kim is also the co-founder of the DeDe McClure Memorial Bail Fund, which I'm sure we'll be talking a little bit about. But just to give a little kind of an overview of who Kim is. Of course. So, okay, Kim. So one of the questions that I love asking people to kind of start to help ground the conversation is, who are your people?
So my people, I have a lot of people, but my people out here in San Diego are mostly centered around the Southeast San Diego area. So for those who don't know, Southeast San Diego is an area that we refer to as being south of the 8. It is the area that has the highest concentration of Black folks, especially Asian communities as well, because a lot of our Asian comrades live in areas like Paradise Hills, National City. But in terms of government, it's seen as an area that is like the hood, high crime, it's been historically divested from, but all my people are there. Those are my people. Pillars of the Community is centered in the heart of Southeast San Diego. Those are my folks. I build with Black and brown folks, the proletariat. Like, those are my people, right? That's who's going to lead the revolution. Formerly incarcerated folks, folks with disabilities, houseless folks, folks who are living with mental illness. Those are my people. Those are the folks who I'm building with. Those are the folks whose leadership I follow. And I'm grateful. We got Muslim folks we build with as well. Arab folks, like, we out here.
Okay, that's what's up. Okay, so the next question then, Kim, is, So who is someone that you admire that you want to bring into the space?
So I want to uplift a couple of people. Number one, Erica Ryan is a dope Black woman. She's a member of BAP, the Black Alliance for Peace. And learning from her, watching her, I had followed her. We had followed each other for a long time on Twitter. She's not on there anymore. They booted her, probably because of her radical politics. But I learned a lot from her. And I'm grateful to her work. She pushes me, whether she knows it or not. She definitely holds me accountable. She will call me in, and I'm grateful. But then also locally, definitely Kelsey Daniels, Naisha Green Washington, Christina Griffin Jones, Layla Aziz. Like, those are Black women who I'm grounded and rooted with out here in the city, who also help hold me accountable, right? But also are there to call me in when needed, and to help sharpen me as well.
That's so beautiful. Thank you for bringing them in. And exciting to kind of hear other names that I think I've also heard before. So such a awesome and powerful community that you're a part of. Okay, so one more kind of like opening question. And this question is, when was the last time you felt brave?
The last time I felt brave was last year when I had to do a thing that was very scary. But I knew that if I didn't do it, I would not be okay. And so I had to essentially go up against somebody who is seen as a giant in some of the spaces that I operate in. And I had to confront them for the first time about the things that they've done to me and other people. And that wasn't easy. And it was very scary. Very scary, and I felt very alone. But other people are now benefiting from the fact that I chose not to be silent anymore. And I think that's kind of the history of Black women, though, right? Like, it takes a Black woman to finally do what needs to be done, and everyone else gets to reap the benefits. But yeah, that was a time where I really felt brave. But it's ironic because I felt brave and I was just angry at the same time. It was people kept telling me what I did was very brave, but I was furious that I had to, it broke me. Like, that's the part that was leading me to finally come out. Like, I was broken down, right? And so I was brave, but I was also very upset. And yeah, it took a lot, but I'm glad that other folks are, reaping the benefits of that, I guess you could say.
No, one follow-up question on this, if that's okay. So you said this was last year, right? So was there like a lesson or something that you took from that experience that you want to offer or that you want to share with folks about either how it went, like how it happened, or even in retrospect, like reflecting on like on that moment?
Some advice I would offer, I would definitely say talk to your people, because that's what I did. I had to lean on them, like, as you know, Candy, our shared comrade, that is my girl. I had to have a lot of long conversations with her because I wanted to hold true to my abolitionist politic as I was going through that process. And so I would say, like, trust your people and lean on them, but also trust yourself that you got this. Cause I had doubted myself a couple times when I was getting ready to go up, against this person essentially and confront them. And I just kept saying, like, I don't know if you could do this. Like, are you going to be able to, be principled even in your engagement with this person who's harmed you, who's caused great harm to you? And I just, chose to stay true. I had to pull myself back into what grounds me as an organizer. What are my principles? What do I hold true? What are my values? And those are the things that gave me the strength to push forward and know, like, I can do this and I'm going to be okay. I'm glad you asked that too, because I think that's helpful. Like, always going back to our principles as organizers is crucial, I think.
Yeah. Well, one, thank you for sharing that. I think this was a powerful way to kind of just start our conversation. And, and to be honest, I think since I met you, I feel like that's one thing that I've appreciated about you, not just as like an organizer, but just as a person, was that you're very principled. So I think even when trying to figure out how to respond to harm, especially since we know that we have been developed or grew up in a very punitive system, to really think about how we're living out principles, especially with an abolitionist politic, which I'm hoping we can dig into a little bit, is such a, I think sometimes feels like contradictory in some ways, because it's like, well, this is not normally how we do things, but if we're actually trying to reimagine and build these alternate futures and these dreams, then that is part of the work, right? Is challenging ourselves, and challenging each other and folks in our community. So I think it was helpful. I think it's an important and helpful way to for us to learn and to say, okay, well, it's not only possible, but this is how I've done it or how others have done it and what we can learn from those experiences.
Yeah, definitely. I absolutely agree.
All right, so I want to talk a little bit about, if it's okay, just this, because we clearly are in February, and one of the framing of this conversation was around Black History Month, and so I guess I want to just start off with, while I know it's important for us to celebrate Black history, Black culture, and fight for Black liberation, every month and not just in February, is there a particular way that you orient yourself or offer folks to orient, as we are entering February, especially in this political moment and in this current climate that we are in with the pandemic and a shift in kind of the organizing conditions that we're in?
Yeah, I'm inviting folks in to open themselves up to be radicalized, especially right now, right? With what we saw happen last year, I think, well, what I know is our job as organizers is to expose the contradictions, right? And we do that day in, day out, month after month, year after year, right? But I think last year, the state kind of did it, they started doing that work themselves just off of how they were responding to COVID, right? The fact that, 45 blatantly tried to blame Asian folks for the virus. And, as soon as he sent out that dog whistle, that led to an increase in violence against our Asian comrades, an increase in anti-Asian racism. And so all the things that transpired, and then the fact that we had another uprising and in the middle of massive statewide, right? For the first time ever, we saw protests in every single state in the US. The fact that police were exacting violence on people at anti-police violence protests, everything was so magnified. It was kind of like the state was putting themselves on display, right? Showing their own behinds. And so a lot of us had talked online about hoping that what was happening last year was allowing folks let this radicalize you. And I'm also saying that now in this month, in this year, with what we've seen happen in Texas, with what we're seeing happen in Oklahoma and even other southern states. It's not just Texas. What we saw happen with the Capitol, right? The violent siege on the Capitol. I'm inviting folks to allow this moment to radicalize you. Do not be scared. Don't run away. Don't be fearful of the word radical, because as our elder, Angela Davis, taught us, it means to grasp at the root of a thing. Let's stop operating from a place of symptoms and let's get down to the very bottom of it. And if the bottom is rotten, right, it's spoiled, it's no longer good, let's uproot it, tear it out. Why do we need it anymore, right? So that's really how I'm inviting folks to orient themselves in this month. Allow these moments to radicalize you. Do not be scared of that word. And then get with people. That's something that I say often. If you follow me on Instagram or follow me on Twitter, I'm always saying link up with poor and working class people. Don't be scared. Those are your people. They are our people. We're not capitalists, y'all. We are not members of the owning class. Now, they'll allow you to think you are because they want you to continue to up.
Oh, 1 second, y'all. Kim was in it. Look, it's the state trying to block Kim's magic and gems. Oh. All right, y'all. 1 second. Thanks for tuning in. Kim was on a roll. but we'll pick up right where Kim left off in a second. Also, feel free, y'all, if you have questions or things that you want to try to bring into the conversation, we would invite that and welcome that. Just click, there's a question mark with a little on the bottom right that you can feel free to send over some questions too as the conversation goes. All right. Hey folks, so great to see so many folks here. Thanks for tuning in. We're talking with Kim Moore, who's an organizer based in San Diego. They dropped and we're working right now to get Kim back. So thanks for your patience. Yes, and so if you have any questions or things that you want to lift up as part of the conversation, please do. We would definitely appreciate that. Okay, I'm gonna just checking here as we are working to connect back with Kim. In the meantime, I'm gonna play a little song from the Black Joy Experience playlist.
I need some healing in
Here's
my
Kim.
life. Someone who cares, like Brandy cares. Yes, someone who shares all of the joy of family. One who believes we can.
Apologies, Greg. My phone completely shut off in the middle of us talking. I've never had that experience before.
No worries, no worries.
And it's fully charged, so I don't know what that was about.
I was making a joke about how it's the state that wanting to block you from sharing your words of wisdom and gems with the group, but we will not be deterred. We will not be deterred.
I said that ain't nothing but the feds.
So I think where you were leaving off, Kim, is you were talking about let this moment radicalize you, like build with working class folks in your community, poor and working class folks within your communities. So I think that's kind of where at least it cut off for me. So I don't know if there was anything else that you wanted to close out on.
Yeah, no, I was just saying like this is the time. Now is the moment. Like that's what needs to be happening right now. And also I encourage folks, don't be scared of Black liberation. There's no need to be scared because the word Black is in front of liberation, right? Because what we know to be true is when Black people are free, everybody else is going to be free. Our liberation is going to lead to the liberation of everyone else. So don't let the words Black liberation scare you or deter you from working with Black folks or leaning into or learning about Black liberation.
Absolutely. So one follow-up question to this. So one core demand during the uprisings was defund the police. And I think there's been lots of conversation about it as a demand, what that actually means. For folks who may be newer to that, could you share a little bit about how you would describe what it means and even how that maybe shows up in some of your work locally in San Diego?
Yeah, definitely. So defunding the police is about investing in our lives. Do we want better lives? Do we want to be able to live in neighborhoods that are safe? Do we want to be safe? Do we want safety for others? And if the answer for all those things is yes, then that is what defunding the police is about. We all are very clear, I think at this point, that the police operate on exorbitant budgets. Their budgets are incredibly inflated and bloated. And then when you go and look at all other budgets for things like social services, parks and recreation, it's just the very smallest piece of the pie, right? So if we were to take money from these bloated budgets and put them or reinvest that money into things that help keep us safe, right? Like housing. Every time someone is able to go to sleep with a roof over their head, they are safer at night. right? Because when you are out sleeping on the streets, you are exposed. That makes you vulnerable. So investing in housing, ensuring that everyone has access to free health care and mental health services, those are things that keep people safe. When people can eat nutritious food, when people are not living in food deserts, when people have access to childcare that's affordable, all of these things are issues of safety. And we can address them if we have the resources to, but the resources that we're referring to is money. And we know that the police hoard that, right? I think even in Chicago, I'm not going to get into numbers because I know I'll mess it up, but a good amount of the COVID relief money that was given to Chicago, they cut a large chunk of it out and gave it to the police, right? That should have gone to the people. This is the kind of stuff that we're trying to prevent. And folks shouldn't be scared of the word defund, because let me tell you, they've been defunding our communities for years. When they pull money out of our schools and shift it over to schools that are fully resourced, that's a divestment from us. When they pull that money out of our communities, they are divesting from us. So go on strike, having to do fundraisers to raise money for their own students to buy them school supplies. Education from. We also don't need to sit and debate the phrase that happened a lot last year, and that was incredibly annoying. It's defund the police. You either get with it or you don't. But if you don't understand what it means, that's fair. We're here to educate you. And then we all need to get busy and do that work so that our communities can be safer. Because remember, the safest communities in this nation are not the ones with police or the most police. They're the ones with the most resources. And that is what we are demanding for our communities as well.
Definitely, definitely. So why do you think, Kim, what do you think is stopping, or why do you think there is, or help people understand the disconnect of why elected officials or folks aren't willing to, or haven't been leveraging resources to invest in our communities? Like what makes, how do people kind of think of roadblocks or ways in which they are saying that, maybe we shouldn't do this, or are there other ways to do this?
I think several things, because it's a demand that came from Black people, right? And anti-Blackness is a global currency. Everyone invests in it. When folks see or hear Black folks make demands, right, in terms of self-determination and liberation, people clam up. They don't want anything to do with Black folks having the audacity to demand their freedom. Right? I think that's number one. So we can never ignore the fact that anti-Blackness is at the root. Number two, some of these politicians are taking money from cops. So what investment or what interest do they have in stopping that source of money or funding coming in, right? That these police officers are funding their campaigns. So how are they going to challenge a power structure, the very power structures that's giving them money, that's pouring into them, right? So those are also roadblocks, which is why we should all be fighting to ensure that politicians do not take money from cops. We need cops out of our politics. We need law enforcement out of our politics, right? But also too, I think some folks are scared because they aren't sure what that means. They don't know what the outcome would be. And because this nation has inoculated us in a sense, right? I'll use an organizing word, into believing that police are necessary, that they actually keep us safe. A lot of folks, I should say, automatically believe like, hey, if we take money from them, they won't be able to help us with crime. They won't be able to help us stop crime. When the real question we should be asking is, what causes crime in the first place? Can we get to the root of that? Instead of, that's again operating at the surface level, right? The symptom, let's get to the root of why crime happens instead of trying to or allowing ourselves to believe that police prevent crime or stop crime and that they are the ones that keep us safe.
Yeah, I think it's an important conversation because I think, I think there's, I've had lots of conversations with different folks around this demand and this idea, and I know that there's been conversations like, well, people are like, well, you know, like if it wasn't for police, like many people in my family wouldn't have jobs or things of that nature, and so it's important to know that if there's a way to be able to say like instead of like, and to your point, instead of putting all these resources into police, we can put it into housing, education, healthcare, a ton of other services and programs that will create pipelines for other types of jobs and opportunities, right, for folks that are outside of policing, which I think is an important grounding and helping people understand like this is actually what it could look like. I also know that there's been lots of efforts to create or to practice alternatives to policing. I don't know if are there, and I know that you're a part of some of those efforts in San Diego. Can you also just give some examples of what some of the alternatives are and could look like?
Yes, and I'm so glad you asked this because this gives me a chance to uplift and shout out other comrades in the state. So currently, well, first I should say creating alternatives to policing is not anything that's new, right? Like folks have been doing this for years. I mean, the Black Panther Party, whenever we come together to create systems that exist outside of our current governmental structure, like that is a form of mutual aid. That's a form of keeping each other safe. So this is not new. I want to make that clear and shout out to our ancestors and elders who've been doing that work for years. But here in the state of California, we have two up in the Bay, up north, right? We have Mental Health First SAC and Mental Health First Oakland. And so those two alternatives to police are fully up and running. So they're already responding to calls that people are making when they're in crises. And every call that they've responded to, both the responders, right? So those organizers who are showing up and the person in crises have maintained their safety, proving that we can do this work. We've always been capable of doing this work and give us the funds to continue to do the work so that it can be sustainable. And then if you move further down south, we have CAT 911, Community Alternatives to 911, operating out of LA, the IE, which is the Inland Empire, and Riverside area. Shout out to the homies at YJC, Youth Justice Coalition, who are a part of that. And they're also doing the same thing, responding to people who are in crises, helping facilitate their entry into care if they give consent, because forcing someone into care when they are not ready is an act of violence. And I'm just, amazed and thankful for their work because they help set the blueprint for this state. And down here in San Diego, we are working on building out what our alternatives to police will look like as well.
Thank you for sharing that. I think those are, I think one thing for me that I've also been learning and reminding myself, especially following the uprisings, is that while people like maybe agree and want to like support the demand, sometimes it's hard, like you don't know what you don't know, or when you hear about and are able to understand other models or things that people have done before, whether and how and what we could learn from that, and how that could also inspire what are other different and models that could also be taken on. I think that's an important part too of how we are unlocking people's like radical imagination of what safety and security and community look and feel like, right? So
agree, absolutely agree.
So I want to ask you a little bit about, I think this is kind of related to the broader politic that of abolition and that you were mentioning, but there was a post that you did on Instagram, and I'm going to paraphrase a little bit here, but it was something along the lines of people sharing lots of popular quotes of folks, but not enough engagement with their politics, and that for probably different reasons it resonated with me. But I wanted to kind of unpack that a little bit. I mean, I imagine, especially because it's Black History Month, there are folks maybe quoting different Black folks. But could you share a little bit about maybe like, what that means for you, and maybe some examples of what are some of the politics that more people should be thinking about and engaging with?
Yeah, definitely. And I always believe in like when I'm sharing with folks, I believe in being very honest and transparent about my own journey. So the person that you see before you today is not the person that I was 10 years ago. I'm still constantly is, I've been a grassroots organizer for 15 years, but I am still learning. I am still unlearning, right? Because we are experiencing this world through colonization, and we are experiencing it through the lens of whiteness. So that causes us, well, it should call us to do the work of unlearning, right? And deconstructing all of that. And so I was one of those people who would quote, you know, folks, our favorite revolutionaries and folks like MLK, right? Spending all that time posting their quotes, but I would not do the work of sitting with and engaging with their politics. So MLK was anti-war. At the time, early on, when I was quoting that, I wasn't learning about how he felt about war, right? I was just trying to give all the quotes that sounded nice, that kind of lean towards civility, right? And peace, right? Those quotes that are easily digestible and palatable to all of us. But I did not wrestle with, you know, this man's politics. And that happens a lot on social media. So many people, we will watch, politicians too, we'll watch them quote folks like Angela Davis and, you know, Fred Hampton and Claudia Jones, like all these people, and no one's actually sitting with the fact that these are folks who were socialists, right? Like they engaged and wrestled with communism, right? They are anti-imperialist, right? They're internationalists. They are not focusing on just what's happening in the US, but they're connecting all of the struggles across the world. And they're tying it back to the fact that the US empire has had a role in all of it. And so when I shared that, that's what I was saying. Like, it's time for us to go beyond these quotes that we love so much that strike at our hearts. And now let's do the work of learning about these individuals, learning about what they believed and what their ideologies were, and adopting them. We need to do more. Yeah, exactly. Some were anarchists. Like, we need to do more than just engaging with what's safe from these folks, because these folks were brilliant, but they were trying to teach us something, that the current system we're operating under is untenable. And we need something that works for us all, because what we're experiencing right now works for some. And we know who that some is. It's the ruling class. It is not the majority of the folks, right? It doesn't work for the proletariat. And so I think it's our responsibility to wrestle with more of that, to struggle with more of that, and not just operate on the surface of, you know, whatever quotes that we see circulated regularly, right? And I think it's especially funny to watch politicians who love capitalism quote MLK, who was an anti-capitalist. And so it's like, this is a man who did not believe in poverty. And y'all are manufacturing and maintaining poverty. This is not right. And so I wanted to do the work to no longer be a hypocrite. And I want us all, you know, to do that work, to move away from being hypocrites and actually sit down and wrestle with this stuff. And is some of it difficult? Yes. Like, I'm reading a book right now written by the great Gerald Horne. And this book, I have to read it with a dictionary and with a reading group, and I have to pull up maps to understand what he is saying and to break down things that he's saying. So is it always easy? No, but is it worth it to struggle with the ideologies and the politics that you know, our ancestors and elders held? It is absolutely worth it, and it's absolutely necessary.
Yeah, no, I appreciate you lifting that up, Kim, because I think one thing that I've learned in my organizing and just even on my journey as just in life is there's a certain humility that I should have and bring, because there's always something more I could learn. In that I should welcome kind of questions and pushing, because even if maybe I disagree, like there might be a different perspective, or I actually might be like feel like I could shift what I thought was conventional knowledge, or what was I thought was the right or kind of a particular perspective. And you know, and I think even for me, I think an important piece too, like that came up, something that came up for me as you were talking, is also like the context and the history of even the system that we have now is actually rooted in anti-Blackness and anti-indigeneity, right? Because discovered this land, which had already traditional stewards to it, so Native people, and so, you know, forced genocide, like forced them to move, kill like, and then like stole people from another continent, right, and from another place and brought them over for slavery. So it's important to also ground that the existing systems was actually founded by folks who literally committed genocide and created slavery with folks that they took from other lands, right? And sometimes people are like, well, and I guess it's the whitewashing of history, and that like if you don't understand that that's actually the foundations of the system that we're in, then of course you won't necessarily have the same understanding of how we know that this is, these systems are anti-Black and anti-Indigenous and racist, like it was meant to be because of that history. So I appreciate you naming that because, especially as more folks are being politicized, and your call to radicalize folks also means contesting with some of the information that we have learned in our schools, right? And things that, and not either the not full truth, or maybe even in some cases the lies that we were told and were socialized with. And to your point again, like a lot of this work is actually unlearning things that we learned because we learned it from a particular lens, from a particular perspective, and we need to challenge that.
Agreed. I just want to add one thing to what you're saying when you talked about how that, like, wrestling with people's politics also calls us to understand like the foundation of this nation, like the fake or faux founding of this nation, right? Because we also need to know, like, the original sins of this nation is that it was committed on the genocide of Indigenous peoples and the enslavement of Black peoples. Also, I want to add too, they also enslaved Indigenous peoples too, and I don't think that's talked about enough, but that's a conversation for another day. But what we also need to wrestle with during those times too is like the creation of race. That race is not real. It is a construct. Now, it is here now, so I want to be clear for anyone who's watching. It is here now, and the implications of it are real, so we have to deal with it. But race was constructed. And when that happened, right, it set the tone for pitting working class and poor people against each other across race. Because if what we know is during that time, Indigenous folks and enslaved Black folks and indentured servants, many of whom were white, were actually working together to stage rebellions and kill slave masters, right? And they had to set up some type of thing, right? They had to create some type of division between these groups so that they would never see themselves as equals again, right? And race helped them do that. Race and giving white folks, white indentured servants property, so land, gun ownership. And then after that, they started to align themselves with the ruling class, even though the ruling class did not care about them. They didn't see them as equals. So I just wanted to add that tidbit in.
No, I think it's important. And I think to build on that, you kind of mentioned this earlier, but, I would love to kind of talk a little bit about even the ways in which like folks using race, and particularly white folks and white supremacy, and how they intentionally try to divide and conquer communities of color. And, and I'll just name it. I think that there's been a lot of conversation around the tensions between Asians and Black folks, and how Asians are used as a racial wedge. And I think especially in this moment, and particularly in light of the pandemic, with the rise of the anti-Asian racism and bias and hate, I think that there's been conversations around, how could we address violence against the Asian community, but really any community, but do so in a way that's about building solidarity, that is not about increasing the police state. And so I wanted to talk a little bit about, has this tension come up in your organizing? I imagine it has, because I know San Diego is diverse in that there's a large population of Asian Americans as well in San Diego. But can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, I would love to. I'm so happy you let us there, Greg, because I have a lot I want to say about that. So just stop me if I just ramble on too long. But I first want to start with what Trump did last year when the virus first hit, right? He named this as the China virus, And what he was doing when he did that was othering Asian folks, right? He was sending out a specific dog whistle to let folks know this is their fault. This is why we don't need people like them in our country. These were all the things, these were the undertones, right? He never explicitly said these things, but just by him framing it as the China virus, these were all the things he was saying underneath that, because his base got it and they started acting from that point, right? From what he had said. And so he was othering our Asian comrades, and he was acting in, you know, xenophobia and just trying to say, like, it's these folks that do not belong here. They're causing problems for us. They are bringing issues into our, you know, perfect America. And so this is why, right? This is the basis of why we need to make sure we don't allow immigrants here, but not just any immigrants, you know, the ones that aren't white, right? Because he doesn't have, we know he doesn't have a problem with white immigrants, but it's those who are not white, right? So he was setting the stage to tell people that they are the problem. And we have seen this play out in many different ways over the course of this nation. There's always been an other. They've always created an other for all of us to cast our anger towards, right? And our hate towards, and our violence towards. And so as such, his base, you know, acted exactly as he expected, right? The anti-Asian rhetoric kicked up, anti-Asian violence kicked up. And well, we need to reject that. We need to recognize when it's happening, and we need to reject it every time. For Black folks, Asian folks are not our enemy. Anti-Blackness is our enemy. That is our issue. And can Asian folks perpetuate it? Absolutely. But that's why we do the work of learning, right? That's why it's a responsibility for other Asian folks to be in community with each other, to teach each other about that, to help them unlearn that. And we need to do our part to make sure that we are, you know, supporting our Asian comrades and working with them in whatever way we can to help keep them safe during these times. And it does happen a lot. And the sad part is, Greg, it happens a lot across, you know, races, not just Black and Asian, but we've seen it happen with Black and Latinx, with Latinx and Asian, right? I mean, I want to go back to, since I'm from Cali, you know, farm workers. The ruling class were pitting Asian folks against Mexican farm workers. They did not want them working together to build a union so that they could fight for rights, right? And get protections that all workers deserve. So we've seen this in the history of this nation. They will always do what they can to pit us against each other, because when we come together and we decide that we're not falling for this anymore, and we decide we're going to build together and organize together, this nation has to crumble. It's going to crumble if that happens. They know that. They are scared of that. We have seen the rebellions of the past, right? In the 1700s, the 1800s, we've seen what happens when working class folks and poor folks get together. And so I just want us to be mindful about that. I want us to be very clear, and this is why we all should be reading, right? And engaging in rigorous study, researching as much as possible, because we need to recognize it whenever it rears its ugly head. The minute that Donald Trump said it, I knew exactly what he was trying to set in motion, and my heart breaks that it's working, that it continues to work. And it's going to, as long as we don't disrupt that process. So I think we all need to, I know for myself, like I talked to my Asian comrades and I said, hey, you know, what do you all need from us right now in this moment? How can we best show up for you? You tell us, and we'll do that. And I think we all need to be doing that. And shout out to the folks in the Bay Area who are rallying together, because the Asian community up there is saying, hey, one, this is wrong. The violence that's happening is wrong. But two, we are not going to address this violence by engaging in anti-Blackness. And some Black people have perpetuated the violence against Asian folks, and it's not okay. But that it's also not okay to think that policing or a more investment in policing is going to stop that as well.
Yeah. Oh, okay. You brought in so many pieces here that I just to kind of touch on. So one, to just your example of the farm workers. I see, I'm not sure the name of the person, but the under abolitionist mutual aid, it talked about Larry Leong. So shout out to the Monongs, Larry Leong, Philip Veracruz, Pete Velasco, who many people hear the story of Cesar Chavez, but sometimes they don't hear about Dolores Huerta and also the Filipino farm workers who are part of that collective of folks to build that power and who transcended language and transcended race and built and a story of solidarity, right? In the fields and picking with the grapes and whatnot that they were cultivating, picking for folks. And so I also know that, and you mentioned the folks in the Bay, and I have to give a shout out to folks like the Chinese Progressive Association and the Asian Pacific Environmental Network, and API Women Lead, and folks who've also been doing solidarity work. And so I think it's an important piece because I think I see this, I've been seeing some narratives of like, Black and Asians are finally coming together. And it's like, actually, nah, folks are working together for a long time, actually. And I think I feel like I've come from, like, I know I come from a history and ancestors who knew that solidarity was not only key to our survival, but would unlock the limitless possibilities of what collective community could look like and be like, right? So I just want to just name that too, that like some folks may not be as familiar with it, but we know it's been there and it's ongoing. Folks are still doing that work, even if it's not necessarily lifted up in social media or in mainstream media. I don't know.
Yeah, I think, Greg, it is funny that people are thinking that it's happening now, because it's like, okay, well, who do y'all think was out at the court in front of the courthouses during the time of the Black Panthers? Like, hello, did you not see this yellow peril? Like, folks were out there, okay? And Yuri, Malcolm X, Gracie Boggs, all these folks, like, this is Asian and Black solidarity ain't nothing new. They just don't want you to know about it, right? They don't want folks knowing that our folks have linked up in the past, have built with each other in the past, built real meaningful relationships, were invested in each other's struggles, and saw our struggles as the one and the same. Mm-hmm. So don't be fooled by the stuff the media won't show you. Know that solidarity has always been there and it's always going to be there. And we would do well to continue building with each other. And I want to just drop this really quick because I think Larry Itliong's legacy is, I think, well known for many folks, but I don't think that it's been publicized enough. So there is a documentary, I believe, forgive me if I mess this up, but I think it's called Delano Manongs, I think. Yeah. And you can watch that to learn more about that movement. So if you have an opportunity to do that, please look into that. I think it's just what they did was very special. But it was not easy, and they struggled a lot because the ruling class were trying to tell them, like, these are folks who came across the border, don't work with them, they're trying to steal your jobs, which we've heard a lot when it comes that narrative when it comes to immigrants, right? And a lot of that rhetoric kept them apart for quite some time. So please, if you have some free time, dive into that, learn more, and also learn about the relationships between other Black and Asian folks, learn about Yuri. There's just so much out there. I just hope folks, dive into that.
Yeah, no, I definitely appreciate that. Yeah, I see someone also dropped the link.
Yeah.
Delano Manongs. I've seen it. It's a powerful documentary. And there's also more books also that are coming out too, trying to do what you said, like share these stories of folks who are critical to the farm worker movement. And so I'm seeing there's a question here that's coming up here in the chat. It says, what would it look like and be like beyond our traumas and surviving?
That is a good question. That's what we're envisioning now. And I'll say this really quick as a quick insert, but I don't know if folks have ever watched Greg dance, but that to me is what it looks like to live beyond our traumas and beyond surviving and thriving. Mm-hmm. When Greg and I first met, I saw him dancing and I told him, that's the freest I've ever seen you. You look so free when you dance. And I want everyone to experience that. I want people to dance, because when Greg dances, it's like nothing else is happening in the world. There aren't issues. We don't have to fight because we are free. That's how Greg looks when he dances. And I want all of us to have that experience where we wake up in the morning and we don't have to worry about going to a job where our job erases us, or where we experience workplace violence or abuse, where we are scared to get on the freeway because we don't know if we're going to be pulled over today, where, you know, we have to drive 10 miles to get to a grocer that has nutritious food, where folks don't have to go broke trying to get childcare so they can work, where we don't have to spend our entire lives working. Hello, capitalism. Mm-hmm. Like, that is what it looks like. It looks like us finally investing, right, in ending poverty and not manufacturing it and maintaining it, because a lot of crime can be traced back to poverty, right? Traced back to traumas, right? Investing in people's wellness and well-being. I mean, imagine if we actually did that. But see, that's why we got to defund the police, because we need the money. We need those resources to pour into these things so that people can live and breathe a little more easier, right? And we can finally realize the vision of liberation, and get, you know, that much closer to it.
Whew, Kim. Yes, I'm seeing lots of love here. So a couple of things. One, that resonates so much, because I think, you know, one thing that I remind folks is that, you know, this wealth is actually stolen wealth. Like the folks, these rich folks, this is not their money. It's our collective wealth off the backs of our ancestors, off of the labor of our ancestors, off of the labor that was forced and not even compensated for of our ancestors. And so, like, it's important that we reclaim it and make sure that it's put into our communities. And as you know, I'm getting a lot of feelings in here right now, because I still remember that moment you came up to me on the dance floor. Like, after the song, you was like, "Yo, Greg, for reals though, like, that was the freest I've ever seen you." And I'll be honest that, like, it was the dancer part of me, the creative part of me, the artist part of me, was something that I always was taught or felt like I had to hide or put aside or not really own in the same way. And it wasn't until probably this last year or two where I was like, no, this is not only an important part of who I am, but something that I need to center and something that I want to, like, hold and actually bring into these other spaces. Because whether it's my organizing, whether it's just me just showing up to a meal, or just being in community with folks, that, like, this is, like, I want to model and I want to bring and inspire folks to feel this energy of freedom and liberation. And dance for me has and continues to be such an important piece for that. So I appreciate you even just kind of, one, naming that, but also, like, just talking about and helping people understand, like, what is that vision? Because I think that especially now with so much suffering and pain and people just trying to make it to the next, you know, trying to make it day by day, it's hard sometimes to feel like we could actually imagine these alternate futures, right? In a place where we could actually all thrive and not just think about survival, but actually be living in an abundance of joy and happiness and love and care and community. In ways that are accessible, right? I see a note here too around access and combating ableism. And that's also just been, I think, especially in this pandemic, has been an important reminder. Like, folks in the disability justice community have been saying, like, we need to do more on access. And now more folks are on Zoom and on using technology in a different way. But this has not been a new concept to folks in the disability justice community. They've been like, well, how are you ensuring that folks who, you know, can't travel as much, or who need these additional resources to be fully engaged, how are you bringing those resources to the table? And centering access has been something that I personally has been a part of my learning journey around. Is there captioning? Is there ASL interpretation, American Sign Language interpretation? Is there other language justice and interpretation for, you know, languages other than English, right? And so it's such an important part, and I think there's more layers. And so for me, that's also the important part of like freedom and liberation, is like where people can be their full selves, can come as they are with no judgment, and be able to co-create joy and happiness and care for each other.
Yeah, and I just want to shout out Abolitionists Mutual Aid for bringing that into the conversation. Thank you for that. Everything we do needs to be accessible, and I know as somebody living in a body that where I don't live with disabilities, right? So I have an even greater responsibility. That's on me to ensure that the things that I do are accessible for folks with disabilities. And let me tell you, it's not easy, because again, I've experienced this world through colonization. I'm experiencing it through the lens of whiteness, and whiteness wants to dispose of people with disabilities. They want to cast people with disabilities out of society, relegate them to the margins, and be done with them. And that's not right. And because it's that much harder, I have to work that much harder to ensure that my information that I'm sharing, that I'm getting out, is accessible. And we all need to be doing that. There are no excuses for us not to engage that way. And even when we think of like what it looks like to thrive and move beyond our traumas and actually be free, that should look like folks with disabilities stepping out of their homes too, or coming out of their homes, right? Not having to worry about if they go to the bank, if the bank has a ramp so that they can get up and get inside the bank, right? Not having to worry about if they're going to be able to get the assistance that they need to do the things that they need to do. It's that shouldn't even have to be a question in their minds. That, you know, we're liberating ourselves from even having to think, will people receive my full self? Do I have to hide parts of myself today in order to be welcome into this world, or to be able to move through this world, right? So I'm thinking about all that, and I'm really grateful that because that's holding us to account, right? Dropping that, you know, talking about making sure we're talking about ableism and accessibility. And we need to remember that is our responsibility. We have to remember that. We have to remember too, all disabilities don't look the same, right? Some folks have medical disabilities. Some folks have what people in the disability justice movement have called like invisible disabilities too, right? So all disabilities do not look the same, but it is our responsibility to make sure that we are caring for folks with disabilities and making sure that all of our stuff is accessible. And I know I still have a lot to learn and unlearn with that, but I'm committed, because that is a part of our work.
Absolutely. I'm committed to. I do want to give a quick shout out to a couple of folks, Melissa, Kelly Calibri, and Liang Nagov, who are the accessibility co-coordinators for the People's Collective for Justice and Liberation. They have taught me and Candy and the organizing team so much around like how we even approach like producing events. How do we think, like the questions that we should be asking even before we get to the event, to make sure that it's accessible as possible, right? And to name what we're able to do and not do, and the transparency that's needed for folks, so folks can know how they could show up and how they could participate or not, right? And what does that look like? So there's a lot more to learn. And I see a note here around the intersections around race and racism and ableism, which I think is also another further conversation. I would encourage folks, if you're newer to the concepts of disability justice and the principles of disability justice, to check out Sins Invalid. They have 10 disability justice principles. That is a good framework and a good grounding point if you are newer, and so I would invite you to check them out.
Wait, Greg, can't stop, won't stop, drop that in the comments, because I'm gonna screenshot it for myself.
Yes.
I wanna look into that too.
Yes, it's Sins Invalid, and we can also tag them. I'll make sure to also tag them in the captions of this, so that it's there too. But it's Sins Invalid, the 10 of disability justice principles, and it's a good grounding and a good framework. It talks about intersectionality, about wholeness, about like intersectionality, collective, community. So yeah, it's a great grounding. So I would definitely encourage folks to check it out.
Thank you.
Of course. So Kim, we're getting close to time here, but of course, in true organizer fashion, one of the final questions I want to ask is, what is an action step, or what is something that you would encourage folks to do 'Cause I think that folks might have like, have heard of, we've talked about a range of issues, right? So do you have a particular call to action that you'd like to share with folks?
I have several. So my thing is not sticking up today. So I would love for folks to look into mutual aid organizations out in Texas and other southern states, so that we can get folks the help that they need. If you are able, please donate. Direct giving is the way to go, y'all. Mutual aid is charity, okay? I'm sorry, solidarity, not charity. So that's what we're trying to move away from, right? That's what the nonprofit industrial complex is about. It's about charity. We want to move towards solidarity. So if you find, please give. Also read. Let's be readers in this moment in time. We need to read. That's sitting with all kinds of text, right? Whether it's books, articles that are coming out. Shoot, I even read white papers sometimes. If you've ever read a white paper, like, yeah. So, I mean, whatever you can get your hands on. Also, read with people, right? Read in groups, because that can help you understand and develop an analysis. When you're reading text with other people, you can have a shared understanding of the text that you read. You can digest it together. You can dissect it together, right? Also, to find your political home. Find your political home. Join an organization. I cannot stress that enough. I cannot do this work alone. I have to do it with people. My political home is Pillars of the Community. It's out here in San Diego. It's founded by a Black Muslim man. It is a Muslim organization where we work with formerly and current incarcerated people, and Black and brown folks. My other newest political home is the Black Alliance for Peace. I'm learning a lot there. Get with people who are going to sharpen you, because you need folks who you're accountable to. Who are your people? Who are you accountable to? Who are the people that are going to come and call you in when you mess up? Let me tell you, don't shy away from that. That's a good thing, because it makes us better. We are not perfect. None of us are perfect. None of us knows everything. But getting with good people, that's going to help strengthen you. That's going to help you grow in your work and in the work that you're doing with other people. They're going to teach you. You're going to grow. You're going to learn. You're going to help mobilize and organize other people. So that is what I would like to posit, and just, pour into folks in the South right now. Also, really quick, Greg, I'm sorry.
No, you're good.
We don't need your elitism about what's happening in the South. We don't need that. Let's dead that, okay? What's happening in the South, don't blame people living in southern states for what's happening in the South. You need to be redirecting that and focusing that on this capitalist system. That is why Texas is experiencing a man-made disaster. Climate change is driven by capitalism. And the fact that their pipes are frozen down there, that is capitalism, y'all. That is not to blame Black and brown folks living in those southern states, okay? So they need your support, not your elitism. And they definitely don't need you victim blaming right now, okay? So redirect that anger away from Black and brown people and poor folks, and direct it towards your Ted Cruz's and all these other folks that invest in the system of capitalism. That is what this nation runs off of, right? And also consider and remember houseless folks in Texas and southern states, and those who are incarcerated, and folks with disabilities. It is more difficult for them to try to flee those situations, especially people who are incarcerated, because they're under someone else's control. This is why we don't need prisons, but that's another story. But there are orgs who are focusing their attention on incarcerated folks, houseless folks, and trans folks and queer folks out in those states. So please identify those resources. I will share those again on my social media accounts, and give if you're able to, because that's what's needed right now. Solidarity. We all need to link up. And remember, don't allow the ruling class to pit you against each other, because that's what they want. They want us fighting each other over scraps. We need to be fighting them, okay? Do not fall for that. Divest yourselves from upholding the ruling class. Link up with proletariat, and let's get busy. We got work to do.
Whoo, Kim! Yes. I'm over here just snapping away. You shared a lot of gems. I am forever grateful for you, Kim. Thank you so much for just taking the time, but also just who you are, your spirit, the energy. It's so uplifting. It's a reminder of the positivity and the humanity in the world. And I hope to continue to be inspired and build off of the example that you are showing to so many folks. Thank you for all of those action steps. It's hope folks were taking notes, but you could rewatch this live to hear again all the amazing suggestions and calls to action. Because, as Kim said, we got some work to do. So
much work to do, but we gonna do it together. Thank you so much for even considering me, reaching out to me. You know how I feel about you, Greg. I just love you, and I cannot wait until I can hug you again. And this pandemic is over. I look forward to that.
Me too. I can't wait to hug and maybe also do a little dance or two. break bread, all of the things. Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. In the meantime, please take care, stay safe, and wishing you all the care and community you need to, and for everyone here, to as we continue to navigate this pandemic and all of the things that we need to navigate. But we're here, we're doing this together, and we'll get through it.
Thank you.
Okay, much love. Take care.